I think we will go ahead, just because I want to be mindful of everyone's time and we've scheduled an hour, but we have a lot of information that we want to share with you. So I do want to thank you for joining us today for our social media workshop. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us. And we hope that the information today that's being shared will be valuable to you and your ministry. My name is Angelique Bird, and I serve as the Director of Communications in the Office of the General Minister and President. On a daily basis, I convene with communicators from our general ministries, and last year we decided that we would begin to host annual workshops with the hope of sharing our gifts with the wider church. This slide represents the ministries that make up the Communicators Forum. We do have one regional ministry that joins us on a monthly basis, and that is Arizona region. So this slide represents those that join us. Of these ministries, there will be three of us that will be presenting during today's workshop. I noted that I serve in the Office of the General Minister and President. Prior to that, I served 5 years in the Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan region, now the Living Waters region. And prior to that, I spent about 23 years in corporate America, with 15 years specifically at an advertising agency just outside of Chicago, Illinois. I have a bachelor's degree in advertising from the University of Illinois and a master's degree in marketing communications from Roosevelt University, which is also in Illinois. I am glad to be here and share with you today. And my fellow presenters will also introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nadine Compton, and I'm the creative writer slash digital media specialist for Disciples Church Extension Fund, which is a general ministry of the denomination that provides building and capital planning. It also is the home of New Church Ministry. And at DCEF, which is the acronym, I am in charge of social media. So if you've seen us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or YouTube, that's because of me. I also do regional communications and I dabble in graphic design, basically the resident millennial. And prior to that, I served with the National Benevolent Association as their mission and ministry grants coordinator. I was also an intern with them for 10 months through the Explore program. And I'm based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm Canadian, yes, it's true. And I did my undergrad at Queen's University in Global Development Studies. And it's a blessing to be here with all of us. Yes, resident millennial. Yes. Still holding it down strong here, Larry. Thanks. And I'll pass it on to Alec.
Thanks, Nadine. Hi, everyone. My name is Alec. I'm excited to be here today. I'm new to this world. I'm 6 months in role as the Director of Marketing at the National Benevolent Association. Do not come from the denominational background. So I'm still learning a lot of acronyms and a lot of ways that people work together, but excited to be here. Before this, Angie's got me beat on the corporate world, but I was close, 12 years in corporate America, mostly at Starbucks and doing a little bit of internal comms, external comms, and data and analytics. Most recently, I helped launch their alumni network. So lots of coffee in my past. And my undergrad is from Arizona State University, which was a degree just in business administration. And I'm going to pass it back to Angie.
Awesome. Thank you. And I have you beat only because of my age, probably, Alec. Okay, but before we go further on, I do want to share a few housekeeping things, and that is to say that our goal is to allow for some questions at the end of our time together. But if you could please feel free while we're presenting to go ahead and put your questions in the chat. We will either try to respond to them in the chat, or we will hopefully have time to address them at the end. If we don't have time to address them at the end, we will follow up with you to make sure that those are answered. Also, which you probably saw when you came in, the workshop is being recorded. So as a registrant, you will receive the link so that you can reference it at a later time. And we do want to share that just as communicators, we believe that every marketing and communication plan, including social media, should begin with a clear and thoughtful strategy. As we won't dive into strategy during our brief time together, we do want to highlight its importance and encourage you to consider creating one. And I'll also share a little bit about that at the end of this presentation as well. So, as far as what we will share today, our agenda, we will have three main sections that we will review today. One being social media platforms. Well, we'll be providing insights about the platforms as well as demographics for those who reside on them. Social media content, explaining the various types and formats for social media content, and then social media analytics, an overview of data and the key metrics to use while reviewing your online progress. So with that stated, we will begin sharing about our social media platforms. So according to Social Bee, there are about 5.22 billion active social media users worldwide. So the questions now become, who are these people and what social media platforms are they visiting? So as we share these insights with you, think about what your church or ministry goals are and who you may want to be reaching online, and try to identify which of these platforms might be most ideal for you for your ministry. I also want to share that since we are the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, I'll be sharing data regarding social media users in the United States, and then I'll share some data points on users in Canada as well. So as we begin, I do want to note that the demographic information that we will be reviewing today from the US are data points from the latest Pew Research study. So let's go ahead and begin with YouTube. So most people think of YouTube as a place to store videos, especially during the pandemic. What I want to encourage you is to not only not look at the site as a place for storage, but actually want to help you expand your reach. Um, Most of the content the content that is on YouTube are videos, and now they have video shorts, which are just shorter videos that you see on some of these other um, social media platforms. YouTube is owned by Google and is one of the larger search engine. So if you think about it, when you break something in your home, ideally, what's one of the first places where you go if you want to try to learn how to do some DIY? You go to YouTube. And you usually type in a question, how do I fix the belt on my vacuum cleaner or something similar? Because YouTube is a search engine, people often visit that platform and they ask questions. So keep that in mind when you're posting anything, any videos regarding your ministry or regarding your church. If it's your Sunday sermons, for example, if your Sunday sermon is about staying grounded in faith during difficult times. Instead of a general title, you may want to consider a title that's in a form of a question. How to keep your faith when the world feels chaotic. It's just little things like that on that platform that may help to increase your chances of appearing in a user search. As far as demographics, there are 2.7 billion monthly active users on YouTube. YouTube is more popular than I think most people realize. It's actually, in terms of their monthly active user, it's pretty high. Actually, it's probably second next to Facebook. There's a balance on that platform, equal balance on that platform between men and women. Many between the ages of 18 and 49 reside on that site. And it's also gaining, what you'll see in a later slide, is gaining popularity among our teenagers, and that's because of the video shorts. Video shorts receive 70 billion daily views on YouTube. And I also want to note that the audience of 65 plus is gravitating toward YouTube. The previous study, they were at 49%. This time when the data was pulled, they're at 60%. So that number is definitely increasing. So now let's look at Facebook. We might have to go. There we go. All right, thank you. Okay, so when you think about Facebook, which is Meta, I don't think, I think people still call it Facebook, but um, that particular platform, a lot of people use it to, to stay connected with friends, family, for networking. Some of the content that is there are texts, images, videos, Facebook stories, a Facebook Live. Nadine will share a lot about the content on these sites. Um, but many of us, we either have a Facebook page for our church or we have a Facebook page for our nonprofit or a different ministry. And so what we want to encourage is that you fully complete your profile. If you have a church Facebook page, make sure that your worship hours, your address, all of that information is filled out and is on your Facebook page. While some folks may go to your website and look for that, many folks also visit social media and will look for your Facebook page to find out that information as well. If you do have a church or ministry page, we also want to encourage that you have it in the name of the church, because not everyone is going to know the pastor's name. I know that there are some who pastors who have it under their name, but if you're looking to get people to come and learn, that they'll likely search and try to find you under your church name. So those are our two tips that we want to share with you. And also our Facebook pages, you can think of it as really a one-way communication. One-way communication meaning that you are posting and you are sharing. There's no one else who can actually post and share from your page. However, Facebook groups is a great way to create community. And that's because when you're in a group, anyone can post and share, and that dialogue can be continuously. There are three different types of Facebook groups. One is a public group where anyone can see and can join. The other is a closed group where they can search and find a group. They can be invited or asked to join. And then there are also some secret groups where they can't be found on that platform, and you have to be invited by a member. But I know one of the goals of being on some of these platforms is to create community. So if you haven't, think about Facebook groups as an option to do that. As far as our demographics, there are 3.06 billion monthly active users that reside on Facebook. Leaning more towards female versus males. Our age bracket, we look at 75% of those on that platform are between the ages of 30 and 49 years of age. And the 65 plus here also have increased from 50% to 58%. And that is, again, just followed by YouTube. But there's 2.11 billion people who have reported that they use it on a daily basis. So that's some of the information as it relates to Facebook. We'll now look at Instagram. So Instagram is also owned by Facebook or Meta, and it's a fun, lighthearted platform. The content that it's there, you have your IG Reels, IG stories, reels, folks post images, carousel, they have carousel posts there as well. Again, we want to encourage you to complete your profile. In your profile, there is always one option for link. Some people use Linktree where then you can link to you can have several links visible. If you're not using Linktree or something similar, it's encouraged to have a website link, at least there where folks can go and get some additional information. Again, similar to Facebook, we want to encourage that if you do have a church or a ministry page, that you have that particular page versus a personal page. As far as demographics for Instagram, there's 2 billion monthly active users here. Again, a higher percentage similar to Facebook of females over males. The majority here are between the ages of 18 to 29. And that's at 78%. This used to be a very popular site among teens until YouTube Shorts came along, and a lot of them began to migrate over to YouTube, which again, we'll talk about that in one of the later slides. So we'll go ahead to look at what is going on and who is on Twitter, or as it is known as X. So Twitter is known for its quick, frequent messages, tweets. It's known as being a news platform. Some of the content there, again, photos, videos, links, text. Again, encouraging you to complete the profile. There's a media gallery there where you can upload images. We want to encourage you to make sure that all of that information is completed on your page. Demographics here are 600 million monthly users. I will note that this is down from the previous time this information was pulled. Used to be 619 million monthly users. Men here outweigh women on this particular platform, with 42% as far as age being between the ages of 18 and 29 years old. Twitter can be a very fleeting site. So if you are posting on this particular site and you want to make sure that your message gets out there, it's just encouraged that you continue to post often. And we'll look at TikTok next. So TikTok is one of the fastest growing platforms. Again, video is a platform for videos. Hashtags are often used on this site because the algorithms are driven by the use of the hashtag, and the hashtag really drive which videos are shown to users. There are 1.69 billion monthly active users here. I think that this number sometimes goes back and forth, and this was one of the sites where I think it was this year or the end of last year where they were considering taking it down. And so a lot of people got off of it. It just goes back and forth. So these numbers are recent, but they fluctuate. More females on this platform than men, with 62% being from the ages of 18 to 29. So from the previous time this information was pulled, all of the age groups pretty much increased by double digits, except for the 65 plus, which increased by 6%. If you look at some of the other demographics, I do want to note too that our rural audience increased from 33% from 16%. So if reaching that rural audience is something that you're looking to do, I think that that's a data point that is important, because that's an audience that is growing on this particular platform. Okay, so we will now move on to LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn we've included because a lot of folks do use this particular platform. It has an appeal. It's really appealing to both business and professional. Good for lead generation, recruiting, network. There are a ton of different formats as it relates to content that is on LinkedIn, text, graphics, videos. A lot of people post links to professional articles and things like that. We want to encourage you to use, obviously, on any of these sites, really high quality images if you are posting images. And then here too, to complete your profile, there's an about section, which you can definitely take advantage of and share particular details about your ministry or your congregation in that section so that others will know. There's also a call to action that's there where you can put a link to share with share your website as well there, or any other things that you might want to do. Donate button, you have options on LinkedIn. There are 310 million monthly active users. Just slightly more males on this platform than females. The highest age group here is the ages of 30 to 49 at 40%. There are 69 million companies that have a presence on LinkedIn. Again, it is a business for business and professionals. And because this is one of the sites, platforms where folks go to network and some to fundraise, I did note here that there are 53% of the people who report being on this site that has a household income of 100,000 or higher. So that is a little bit information regarding LinkedIn. And as everyone usually asks, because it's important, especially among our congregations and with some ministries, where are our teams? Where are they out there as it relates to social media? And Pew Research also did a specific study regarding teens aged 13 to 17. And so what we find is that most of them, 95%, are on YouTube and 67% are on TikTok. Again, mentioning that YouTube Shorts have been an influence on teens migrating away from Instagram and over to YouTube. On Instagram, this age bracket used to be 72%, and it has gone down to 62%. There are also some different stats here on this page as it relates to ethnicity, and then noting that teens they note that on YouTube, 15% say they're on there constantly, and then TikTok, 16%, almost constantly. So again, those are two channels that if you are looking to reach teens, you may want to consider those particular platforms. So that concludes our information as it relates to the US data. And now we'll review some of the data for social media platforms in Canada. This data is gathered from a number of sources because we were trying to find one that was most inclusive. So I do want to note that there are multiple sources that have been used. And I also want to note that one of the sources provide data that's based on an ad audience, and that's been noted here on these pages. And so you can use that information as directional or kind of just as at a very high level. So we look at YouTube. This is an example because I noted earlier that YouTube is owned by Google. So the data for this ad audience was pulled from the Google ad planning tool. And so what they say is that there are 19.8 million users, 54% being female and 46% being male. Of this audience, 65% are Gen Z. So we're talking about ages 13 to 28. And I also want to just note the age brackets for this particular for this data is a little bit different. So they're larger. So this one is they go by Gen Z, millennials. So Gen Z are the highest percentage that reside on YouTube. But that's somewhat similar to what we saw for the American data on YouTube as well. A lot of the younger generation is there. And then 53% of the folks on the platform note that they use it at least weekly. So for Facebook, there are 26.59 million active users. The audience notes that they skew a little, just a tad bit more female than males. 78% are adult users. 70% of those adults, and when I say adults, that is age 18 and older. And then 70% of that audience are boomers. So that gives you an idea of those who are on Facebook. And it too is their most popular platform, similar to US. 67% here of the folks say that they are on it at least weekly. So for IG, there are 20.65 million active users. Ad audience show they skew higher towards female. 55% are adult users, 18 and older. And then 69% are Gen Z again, ages 13 to 28. And 41% use it at least weekly. TikTok has 14.89 million active users. Again, the audience is showing it skewing a little bit higher, this one, towards males. 31% are adult users, with, again, Gen Z making up 44%. That is the highest percentage on this particular platform, and 18% saying that they use it at least on a weekly basis. So we'll look at three others. We have LinkedIn, Snapchat, and then Twitter. So on LinkedIn, we have 11.77 million active users with the ad audience of 54% male and 46% female. Again, similar, leaning more towards male. 30% adult users and 23% on this particular platform are Gen Z. Also, you have 23% that are millennials. And so when you look at that 30% and you say adult user, you're talking about 18 and higher. So, and then we have 23% Gen Z, and that starts at 13. So I'm thinking that Gen Z audience is probably on the higher age side that are residing on LinkedIn. Again, it just depends on how the data is pulled, with 18% of those who are on there saying that they are on there at least weekly. We did add Snapchat here because, as you'll see shortly as we talk about the younger generation, Snapchat definitely still has a good presence in Canada. And the ad audience shows us that there are 12.8 million users, skewing higher towards female, with 24% adult users. Twitter, 14.31 million active users, skewing towards male, which we saw with the other data as well. 27% adult users, 18 and above. And 29% of those are Gen Z. That, again, is the highest percentage that are on that particular platform, and 17% saying they use it at least weekly. So again, if you're in Canada and you want to know, okay, where is our younger generation? The source that we're using to try to locate where they're residing on social media actually shared data that had youth between the ages of 7 and 17. So the findings indicate that 53% of them are on TikTok, 42% are on Snapchat, 40 on Instagram, and 37% on Facebook. Would be interesting. There wasn't a stat for YouTube, but that would be interesting to know. But TikTok is right now one of the highest percentage of the younger generation are on that, followed by Snapchat. And then what are they doing? They're watching videos, 78%, they're messaging, or they're just reading content. So that gives you an idea of some of the data and what is happening in Canada as it relates to our social media platforms. So I know this was a lot of information, but hopefully you have a good ideal, better ideal of where the billions of people who are out here on social media are residing on these platforms. And it gives you some insights on the overall audience that's available to you on these platforms. And hopefully, given your social media goals, there's one or two that might resonate with you. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Nadine, and she is going to review social media content with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Yep. So just want to preface this by saying this is Social Media 101. So I'm just covering the very, very basics just to make sure that everybody has a solid foundation from which we can grow from. Okay, with that out of the way, we can go to the next slide. Okay. So before we get started on what content looks like, what on the different platforms, I think it's really important that we cover the best practices. So the first bullet point is communicates your values. So you're on the internet because you want folks to know about your services, about your ministries, but people won't engage in those unless their values align with yours. So it's really, really important that you are communicating your values. So, for example, if your congregation or regional ministry is open and affirming, that should be explicit and clear in your content. And someone who is a part of the LGBTQ plus community shouldn't have to go hunting to find it. That's usually the first thing folks in that community look for on a website. If they don't find it, and they're worried about their, feeling safe and welcome, they're out of there. So if you are open and affirming, you can post about your involvement in the local Pride Parade or your queer outreach ministries, or being inclusive about those who you include as guest speakers or preachers. Um, if you, for example, speak about yourself as a congregation or a camp that welcomes all, but your content doesn't depict anyone who doesn't look like you or it isn't accessible to those who are disabled, then you may have to reconsider how you speak about yourself. And I'm going to talk about accessibility later on. Okay, the next bullet point is consistent. Be consistent. If you have ever attended any of my workshops at New Church Ministries Leadership Academy, this is a shameless plug, then you will know that the one thing I say that you should take away from anything I present is that consistency is key. So if the last time you posted was at Christmas a year ago, you can't expect people to suddenly like your new post. I'm not saying you have to post every day, but if you aren't consistent, then your followers will forget about you. There are many different ways you can do so, maybe through a calendar. I use one. It's very, very helpful. And you can see actually when your followers are most active from professional dashboards, and that's something that Alec will discuss more at length in the next section. So the next bullet point says events, sermon clips, job postings, peek behind the curtain, trends. What am I talking about? This is the different content, just examples of what you can post about. So this is based on your values, yes, but also on what your followers care about. So let's say they're really heavily invested in your outreach events, then promote them on social and share updates and reminders. So that's pre, during, and post, right? So you have a lot of opportunities. It's not just the day before or not just the day of. You have a lot of opportunities to engage in content about an event. So when I say sermon clips, that's pretty self-explanatory. Same with job postings. Now, peek behind the curtain. What I mean is that is content that is great for your audience to get to know the person behind the screen and put a face to that person, right? And it really, really humanizes your brand. Brand is a scary word, I know, but it just means identity, right? It humanizes your, First Christian Church, right? So the next part is trends. Again, don't get scared. Trends are fun, right? We all know what's going viral. It changes all the time. And yeah, I think you should engage with them. But you should engage with them smartly, right? Only if it makes sense for your church to jump on it. Let's say there's a new trend about cute dogs, but your church doesn't have a ministry about like animal welfare, then maybe it's not a great idea to jump on it. And there's actually some new church ministry and DCEF we've jumped on trends before that made sense to us, and those posts performed really, really well. Okay, so the next bullet point is on diverse representation. Um, Hopefully this is part of your values, especially as the kind of church that we are. I just want to be specific about what I mean by this. So this is, let's say you have a diverse church or you hope to attract a diverse membership, then it's really important that you show women in leadership. When I say that, I mean in the imagery that you use to promote stuff. It's important that you show youth, people of color. It shows that you're not only catering to white folks, right? And when I say that, I also mean it's really, really important that you get consent from your subjects of the photos, especially when it's children. You need to get consent from guardians. And again, diverse representation also goes back to what I said about accessibility. It's really important to add alt text to describe posts for folks with disabilities and to provide closed captioning to videos. Closed captioning is like subtitles. Okay. The next bullet point is be a good neighbor. Yes, I spelled that with a U because I'm Canadian and we use British spelling, but only sometimes. But you get what I mean. So I use that phrase to basically say, don't toot your own horn all the time. Toot your own horn, that's great, but don't do it all the time. Share what others are doing as well. So, for example, at DCEF, we're a financial ministry, but we make sure to share content from the Christian Church Foundation, from the pension fund, because we already know that our audience is coming to us for financial advice, for stewardship guidance. So that content from our neighbors will be relevant to them as well. Again, it's aligning with our mission. If you're just coming across as self-promoting, then you will come across as a salesperson. Nothing wrong with being a salesperson, but that's not who we are. Okay, evergreen versus time-sensitive content. That is the next bullet point. So, evergreen versus time-sensitive content. Evergreen is like trees, evergreen trees. They remain relevant and valuable indefinitely, right? You can share this kind of content anytime. So think of your homepage, if you have a website, your Who We Are page, your ministries page, that kind of stuff hopefully kind of stays pretty stable throughout the year. But time sensitive or real-time content is for viral issues or updates to your staff page. If you're launching a capital campaign, it's really meant to capture short-term attention. Okay, so post formats is the last bullet point, and it's actually the next section in my part of the presentation. Okay, so the most basic post that you'll see on social media is a text post. This is what we started off doing on Facebook. I'm not going to include MySpace because to me that is the pre-social media era and is very sacred. Okay, so this text post here is from Reverend Terry Hort Owens from back in May, and it's brief, to the point. It's really exemplifies what I'm trying to get across here. It's better for your personal profile. It's ideal for quick updates or announcements like event cancellations, rescheduling, or delays. And just a note to say that this is from Facebook and it's dark because I have my Facebook in dark mode to protect my eyes. If yours is white, that just means yours is not in dark mode. So yours may look different. Okay, the next slide is about the next kind of post that you'll likely see on social media, and that's a text post with a link. So a link preview, which you can see underneath the text, populates an image associated with the link. But that link, so the URL, it's http colon, blah, blah, forward slash, that link must already have an image on the page itself. So if you go to the link, for example, if you look at the image on the left for the Ministerial Relief and Assistance page of the Pension Fund's website, they've already done their work and associated an image with that. So if I were to upload a link to a job posting and that's a link to a PDF, then that's not going to have an image. And when I add that link, Facebook or LinkedIn is not going to auto-populate that link preview that you see underneath. So adding a link to a text is the easiest way to add an image to a post. You don't have to upload and then figure out which folder you put that image in and blah, blah, blah. So posts with images get clicked on more. So it's a win-win. You redirect people to your About Us page and you get more people clicking on the post. Okay, so you'll see here that in the text, you don't actually see that long link, right? Because that's because Facebook, LinkedIn, yada yada, they will grab that link and auto-populate the image for you. So you can delete the URL, so it looks much cleaner, and that image won't go away. Like I said, Facebook's on the left, LinkedIn is on the right. So if you look at the image on the left, which is Facebook, there's two sets of text that are bolded and in blue. So they act as links. That first like phrase, pension fund of the Christian Church, when you click on that, it will take you to the Facebook page of the pension fund of the Christian Church. And I made sure to tag them to do that. So I typed in at and then pension fund of the Christian Church popped up in a drop down link and I drop down menu and I clicked on them right there. And then again, that's also being a great partner, right? And being a good neighbor. That second bold and in blue text is the hashtag for our denomination, CCDOC, another lovely acronym to remember. So if you click on that hashtag, it will take you to all the other posts on Facebook that also have that hashtag. That's basically saying, here's our online community, right? I would be careful with those. In the past, you would use 30 of them. Limit it to 3 on Facebook. Um, okay. On the right is LinkedIn. And you can see, yes, I've tagged those pages. They're coming across as purple. There's, the reason why Larch Northern Colorado is not tagged is because they don't have a page. And I also didn't add a hashtag. LinkedIn is a little bit different. They're not super hot on it. You can use it, but I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. That's text with images. Another kind, right? So this is when you're manually uploading an image. So you can see it's not associated with any link. It's just one that, upload and then I search for the folder and uploaded it. So the one on the left is Facebook and the one on the right is LinkedIn. And you can see that I've actually branded the image on Facebook, which is what I should have done on LinkedIn. So do as I say and not as I do. Okay, and again, I've used the hashtags here as well and tagged the relevant pages. Here on the left, you'll see I did include that link because I think for some reason there wasn't an image associated with that link. Okay, so going right along. So the next slide is on text with images, plural. So Facebook is on the left, on the right is LinkedIn. So if you add 3 images, the platform will highlight that first image, like you can see how it's bigger, and make the second 2 smaller. But if it's more than 3, then it will shrink. It will still shrink all of them, having that first image smaller and the second, third smaller. But the fourth one will have, as you can see on LinkedIn, it will add a plus however many extra images there are. And when you click on those extra images, it will take you to the rest of them. That's why I try and just stick to 3 or 4 images because the more folks have to click, the less likely they are to engage with your post. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, this is also a post with images. This is from Instagram, and this is called a carousel post, which Angie referred to before. So if you see that little red circle on the side of the images, that allows you to slide and kind of swipe through all the images. There's like a max of 20 now on Instagram. It used to be 10. Um, and so that's really, really handy for use on cell phones, right? And so that's what social media is trying to gear yourself towards. I think because Facebook was one of the first ones, it's not as mobile friendly in my opinion, and LinkedIn is more professional, again, not as mobile friendly, but Instagram is super, super geared towards mobile. Okay, we're coming to the end of my section. You can wake up. So short videos. I know everybody wants to talk about that. So short videos or short form content is king or whatever relevant monarchy you want to talk about right now. This kind of content will outperform all other kinds, but it takes more work to do. You don't have to do it, just letting you know. So the image on the far left is of a Facebook reel. The second is of me. It's an Instagram reel. And the third is a YouTube short. Before I was going to click on them and we would watch the videos, but I'm being mindful of time. I don't think we have time to do that. You can also upload short videos to TikTok, but I will say most small to mid-sized nonprofits, which I assume most of you are, they stay away from TikTok. If you have a membership of thousands, go for it. If you have a staff of 10, marketing staff of 10, go for it. But if you don't, which I assume you probably don't, I recommend you just stick to Instagram because it captures the broadest demographic that you're trying to reach. Also, this kind of content that you can see here, um, and a lot of, frankly, short form content is considered a peek behind the scenes, right? Peek behind the curtain, which humanizes your team and it really responds well with followers. Anytime DSOF or NCM posts stuff with people's faces, our followers love it. You can tell by the engagement numbers, like the likes, the number of comments, and Alec is going to go into that in more in depth in his section. So the last part of my section is long videos. So I do want to make a distinction between long form and short form video content. Short form content is brief and easily digestible. It's ideal for quick engagement on platforms like, TikTok or Instagram. You're not going to like this, but these videos are under 60 seconds, and the average short form video content is 15 to 90 seconds because you're watching it on your phone and you have to hook people within the first 3 to 5 seconds. So if you're ready to get on TikTok, you really have to consider all of this. So long form content is in-depth and comprehensive. It's videos, honestly, any video over 60 seconds, over 90 seconds is considered now long form. It's better for detailed explanations and driving conversations. On YouTube, tutorials that are 7 to 10 minutes perform well, explainer videos 10 to 15 minutes. Now, New Church Ministry, when we upload our webinars onto our YouTube channel, they're over an hour. And to me, that's fine. You just have to know that your engagement will likely drop off at the 10-15 minute mark or even sooner, or they'll perform less well than short form content. If your purpose is to make sure that content is out there and people have access to life-saving information, that's way more important than stats. Not to put down what Alec is doing in his next section, but yeah, with that, I will lead into Alec's section and hopefully you gain something valuable from mine.
Okay, thank you, Nadine. The hard part about going last is I'm the last one with the baton, so I kind of got to speed through here. But we will definitely have, we'll share this afterwards, and this isn't the end, hopefully, of this conversation. I'm speaking for myself. I'm happy to be a resource, so you can follow up with any questions. I also want to acknowledge the robust combo in the chat, specifically around devices. I think that online with social media, we are seeing like 90 to 95% of that is going to be on a mobile device. And like Courtney shared, the email and website, you're going to see a much more split between computers and mobile. But for social, we're primarily talking about mobile. So I'm going to jump to the next slide right away. So I get to talk about data, numbers, metrics. I will tell you, as a storyteller myself and a communicator, I used to hate data. My wife's the finance person. She uses Excel. If it was numbers and math, I didn't want anything to do with it. But I have really fallen in love with data because data tells stories. So everything that Angie and Nadine have been sharing so far is because of data. That's how we know what demographics and who's where and which of these social posts are doing well. This is all because of our data. So it's vastly important. It's not speculation. It's a fact. It's how we measure impact. It's how we advocate for things. And it's how we refine our strategy. And that's the piece that I think is the most important, is that all data should be considered separately. So when you're looking at what your objective is, just like Nadine was saying, are you trying to get out a life-saving message? Are you trying to engage in dialogue? Are you trying to get people to show up to an event? All of those will have a different metric associated with them. And so we'll talk about that in the next couple slides. So a little overview on my next slide of what data and analytics is. Sometimes these words get thrown around interchangeably, but they are separate. Data, as I already shared, is the metrics, the numbers. It could be in a calculator. It can't be disputed. It's just a stat. Analytics is the practice of analyzing that. This is where it gets fun. It's the curiosity. So data gives you the not raw numbers. It tells you your audience size, your followers, how many clicks, how many views, and we'll get into some of those terms. But the analytics is kind of asking why and what do I do with it since then. So interpreting that data to make a decision, to inform your strategy, to adjust your approach, that's where analytics comes in. Okay, so as I mentioned, some key definitions and terms. I was not on the council of social media where they all decided who was going to use which terms for Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter. So unfortunately, there's not like consistent language, but there are some key definitions and terms that you will see across platforms. And I wanted to define some of those just so we have a context of what we're talking about here. So the most important is your followers, your audience. This is your people. So followers different versus audience are slightly different. A follower has taken the choice to follow your Instagram account, your Facebook, your LinkedIn. They've taken an action. Audience can be broader than that because the algorithm can serve your content to people who have not necessarily followed you. So your audience is a little bigger. Your followers are the people who have actively selected that they are engaging and interested in your content. Different terminology for different platforms might be subscribers or viewers, but this is talking about the same concepts here. Reach is going to be the number of unique people who saw your content, and then views and impressions are going to be the total of times that content was viewed. So if someone posted something I follow, posted a Instagram reel I really liked, I might watch it 5 times. That's going to count as 5 different views or 5 different impressions, but only 1 reach because I'm the one individual. So all of these may feel like kind of minutia. What's the point of breaking these apart? But it is really important to think through when you're looking at these metrics. What do they mean? So I'm going to keep going down this list here. As I've already alluded to, interactions is that sort of like impressions. It's the amount of time someone's engaging with something. It's the total of actions taken on your content. So you can react to something, you can share it, you can save it. There's a lot of different actions that your audience can take when engaging with your content. The some broad category of those is your engagements with that. And then on the bottom here, we have some of these fractions that are really just taking these 2 numbers and stacking them on top of each other in different ways. So for instance, your engagement rate, one that is very popular in social media to look at, is looking at the amount of engagement divided by your audience and followers. And that's where you get this percentage and kind of start to understand, okay, of the people who are following this or of the people who are seeing this, how many of them are taking an action associated with. Similarly, click-through rate. If you have a link, like Nadine shared a couple of examples of that, this is how many people actually took action and clicked onto that link, which is really valuable if that link was an open job posting or an event registration. And then my final note here is that these may be defined a little differently for platforms, and they're kind of always changing. So when in doubt, Google it, look it up. Okay, so benchmarks and cadence. I'm going to go over this pretty high level, but basically, without context for your own metrics, you won't know what the story is being told. So if you had a post that got around 10 likes, you don't really, that doesn't really tell me anything, just that number by itself. That's where benchmarks come in. So understanding basically an average of likes that your posts get in a given period of time. So looking at on average, my posts get 2 likes, and that now tells me that 10 means something. That 10 now means that's 5 times as many engagements than I got prior. But if your benchmark is on average 30 likes, then that's telling a totally different story. That's a third of the people who are liking this post. So the cadence defines the benchmarks as well. So how frequently are you looking at your average post over a week, over a month, or post level, like the example I just gave? So what I recommend is coming up with benchmarks for your own channels. Now, this could get stressful really quickly, but we will get into the fact that we have dashboards. So please don't go making Excel files and doing the math yourself nowadays. Those can just be determined for you. But some suggested cadence here is looking at like your post level insights. So this post had 10 likes, 1 share in the aggregate of 1 post, maybe on a weekly basis, just to get a pulse and see how the content is doing. And then maybe monthly, look at your total. How many followers did I gain as a whole month? How many likes and shares did we get as a whole month? And then maybe quarterly or annually, depending on how often you post, just look at the whole thing as an aggregate. So that's the cadence that I recommend. And then on the right-hand side, I have kind of a table looking at what this looks like in the story it could tell. So if your average of likes, your benchmark was 8, or your comments were 2, or your shares were 1, and your reach was 250. And then on a recent post, you got 5 likes, 1 comment, and 3 shares, and 400 reach. What is the story? That's where it kind of gets fun. Okay, so we're seeing twice as many people liked this, but it got half as many comments. So maybe it was content that was engaging, but it didn't invite a dialogue. Maybe it was an announcement post, but there wasn't really anything for people to share there. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative thing. And that's why I think it's important to like think about your goals and your strategy when you're looking at the metrics. So if this got 3 shares, that's usually a positive thing. Shares means it's getting it shared not just with your audience, but the audience of your followers. And for some posts, you may really want shares. Again, if you're trying to get the word out about an event or a job posting. So that's why it's important to know what your objective is with your content so that you can interpret the data accordingly. I don't know how I'm going to get through the next couple slides in 2 minutes. I'm kind of looking at Angie's face. Is she saying just keep going? Okay. I talked fast already, so I really don't want to go hyper speed here. Another thing that I think is really important with benchmarks is looking for your outliers. So on this little graph here, you can see there's a giant spike. I am always fascinated by that. One of the things I like to say is there's no such thing as bad data. Now, there is such a thing as inaccurate data. So you want to make sure that it is correct. And always an outlier is an opportunity to look at that. But if a post performs super high or super low, both of those are a positive thing from a data perspective because they're telling you something very clear. So once again, if we had a benchmark of 10 and you had a post that had 1 like, your heart might sink because you really wanted people to engage with that, but it is really telling you something. And that's where the investigation comes in of like, did we post at a different time of day? Did we use a totally different photo? Did we talk about this in a different way? Was it the topic? And so this is where you kind of come up with your hypotheticals. So it kind of taking us back to lab and science class here, right? You want to be careful to only change one outlier at a time, or sorry, one variable at a time. A lot of people are very quick to, they see a bad post or not bad, right? A post that performs super low or super high, and they'll pivot everything. So they won't post on that day again. They won't post that content again. They'll talk about it differently. Well, now you can't really learn what it was about that post that drove that change, that outlier. So what I recommend is just changing one thing at a time and trying to just calibrate and learn and lean in on your audience and figure out what's working, what's not working. High performing outliers are always better, where you see, whoa, this post maybe it went viral in your own little sphere, right? It got 30 shares, it got a bunch of comments. What was it about that my audience is keyed into? What was it about my denomination that this content is resonating? Because that's where the real power comes in and what we're trying to learn. So as I mentioned, there's really a lot of dashboards nowadays for you to use, and this is great. I remember in the OG days of social media, I was pulling a lot of these manually in Excel and doing the math myself. Nowadays, pretty much every platform has a free dashboard that you can use that's just baked into the tool that does all this math for you. So I have some screenshots here of how to get to which ones. So if you have a Facebook page that you manage, right at the top, it says professional dashboard. And when you click on that, it takes you to this dashboard that shows you all these terms and metrics that we talked about. It charts them, it has graphs, you can customize it. It's fantastic. It can be a little overwhelming, so we will briefly walk through what to do with it. Instagram has one as well. And then I think on the next slide, I walk through how to read the dashboard. So everything we've talked about so far is applied to the dashboard. Make sure you're looking at the right time frame. Sometimes it'll default to like a week, and maybe you were looking at a month, and those numbers are going to be very different. So always check the time frame to make sure it is the one that you think you're looking at, and just look for the things we've discussed. Look to see, is your audience growing? It doesn't have to be growing. You may have a small church that you're super happy with, so you're not looking for the metrics to change. But if they do start dropping off, what is that telling you? Or growing, what is that telling you? Look for trends, as we've discussed. Look for outliers. Look for your top performing and bottom performing content. But you can also look at some of the things that Nadine and Angie have mentioned here. Just because Facebook as a whole platform has a large percentage of demographic representation this way doesn't mean that your Facebook followers are the same. So you may skew younger, you may skew older, and some of these dashboards will actually tell you that. And I believe Facebook even tells you that on a post level. So I could see at the MBA that one of our young adult leadership grants posts saw more young adults saw that than our post around executive leaders, which is fantastic data to then share back to say, okay, this is getting before the right audience. You can also look at time of day and see which ones are posting better depending on what time of day you posted. So your dashboard is going to be your best friend in all of this. And then lastly, there are a lot of other dashboards out there. We've had some conversation in the chat already around email versus site. We're really focusing on social media today, but there are dashboards for pretty much any platform. So if you're using email, MailChimp, they have a dashboard. LinkedIn has a built-in dashboard. Meta Business Suite has one for your Facebook and Instagram if they're linked, which is really helpful to see side by side how those posts do. You can see how stories perform. YouTube has a dashboard. TikTok has a dashboard. Pretty much everybody has a dashboard. And again, when in doubt, I would Google it. There's a lot of tutorials out there that'll just walk you through what to be looking for there. In this screenshot, you can see an outlier right there in the middle, that huge spike. And that's actually MBA's Facebook. And so that was something where I got to investigate and say like, whoa, what did we post that day? Why did it do so well? And you can also kind of see it's a little small, but they do the math for you. So it's showing the views, but it's also showing during that time frame, did the views go up or down? It's showing my impressions, it's showing my reach, everything we've discussed, it's pulled there for you, and it shows you trends as well. All right, I did my best here to kind of walk through all of this. I know there's a lot of data that we're throwing at you, but data, I hope you leave with, if nothing else, Nadine wants you to leave with consistency. I want you to leave with data is powerful, and it is how you tell stories. It's how you understand your audience. I have met so many times with people who are a program lead or whatever, and I say, how do you think that content did? And they're like, it was amazing. And I'm like, how do you know that? What are you grounding that in? Did it actually perform amazing? Like, are you reaching the people that you want to be reaching? Now, like Nadine said, social media isn't everything, right? If you got the post out and that was the most important thing, and depth of engagement, 3 people saw that and it changed their life, that's amazing. Where I'm not here to just make it all about high performing metrics. But again, that is also data, knowing those 3 people who saw it. So use it to report to your leadership, use it to look for trends, use it to advocate for the power of your work and to understand your audience. So underneath I had kind of just a little checklist of like, how do you put all this together, review your dashboards weekly, come up with your own benchmarks, identify outliers, come up with hypotheses, adjust a variable at a time, and then share that story.
Awesome. Thank you, Alec. I know we've covered a lot of information, and I just want to quickly share one additional resources with you that might be of interest. And that is that the Office of General Minister and President, we offer a digital church workshop. And it's about doing ministry in both your physical location and in the digital space. It can be a half day or a full day experience that expands a little bit more on what we just discussed here. The workshops helps you to develop a strategy, and we spoke in the beginning about the importance of having a strategy. So it does help you to create a social ministry strategy, and that is aligning your church or ministry goals with your social media presence. So by the end of those who participate, you will have a ready-to-use strategy. If you are interested, or if your region is interested, I just recommend you please reach out to your regional minister and have them to contact me. My email address is on the screen. So we have tried to answer some of those questions that you had in the chat. I know we're over, so please know that if your question was not answered, we will be sending out a follow-up email that has the link to the video recording, as well as then any of those questions that were not answered. I want to thank both Nadine and Alec for sharing their gifts today, and also our other communicators who helped with the workshop, Aaron, Zavala from Helm, and then Courtney Richards from Week of Compassion. We hope this has been insightful for you, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much, and we will be following up with those 2 things. All right. Thanks again. Take care.